Teresa Bienken, CEO of National Speakers Bureau Canada and Global Speakers Agency. We're one of the original speakers bureaus in North America, celebrating 50 years of service. And we envision that the sharing of ideas inspires action to make the world a better place through bringing expert speakers and thought leaders to your conferences, events, and training sessions. NSB has the key. We help you unlock possibility in your personal and professional lives and for your teams. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker. She has the #1 book on Amazon right now in human resources as a new release. I first met Jennifer Moss when she was named Innovator of the Year by Canadian Business Magazine, and her work was the inspiration for a gratitude ball we designed in our office. She specializes in future-focused leadership development, expertly balancing employee well-being with performance using data-driven leadership strategies. Jen's the author of 3 books, including her latest Harvard Business Review Press publication, Why Are We Here? Creating a Work Culture Everyone Wants. You're getting an early look at her latest research and insights for 2025 on Why Are We Here? Cultivating Well-Being, Preventing Burnout, and Fostering a Thriving Work Culture. Welcome, Jen.
It's so great to see you. I wish I could see all of you out there right now, but I am seeing from the chat that you're really engaged, and I'm thrilled to be here. And congratulations, Teresa. I can't believe it's been 50 years that NSB has been around. You should be so proud. I am going to dive right in here because it is a very short amount of time that we have together. And, you know, the book is pretty broad. If you've read it already, some of you I know have started to dig in already from, you know, the people that are on here, Sharon and Cam, but you know, it is a quick time. So let's go right into this and chat about why are we here? The question, why are we here? Existential question for an existential time. I think we can all agree. I've been saying the workforce is going through this collective midlife crisis. Everyone across the board is feeling the sense of ennui and listlessness. We talk about burnout kind of being a pandemic problem, but as you can see from the trends, it's at peak rates. It's worse than it's been, you know, in the last 3 years. We've even seen it increase. 43% say financial strain, which is really interesting because burnout has always been a consequence of workload, overwork. And yet we're seeing these pressing external issues coming into the workforce and impacting our sense of well-being and levels of chronic stress. And that's led to what Gallup is calling the Great Detachment. I think that's an excellent definition of what's happening. And it's really the sense of being stuck. So maybe there's less mobility for employees to be moving around. But I think what's worse is having someone that is highly disengaged, actively unhappy, quiet quitting on the job, and yet they're stuck. We want people to move if they're feeling like they aren't happy in their organizations, because that leads to lack of productivity and obviously stress and worse morale. You can see by the data here that across the globe, people are at the highest levels of disengagement that we've seen. And I think this is making a lot of us feel like we just can't wait to get away from work and out of work. And I think that's a miss, because I've been saying this for over a decade of research that's now extended into over 15 years of really looking at how work can be fuel and how work can be amazing if we are, again, it doesn't mean that you have to be happy all day long at work. I mean, that's obviously not going to happen. There's days that we're going to feel like it's mundane and boring, and yet we want to still feel like there's a sense of meaning and mattering and accomplishment that we get out of work, because it is a consequential to our life experience, to our life satisfaction, and even our longevity. When I went to really dig into this next book, it wasn't like I had a plan. It actually came to me in a moment. This was just as I was now in the throes of bringing my book, The Burnout Epidemic, my last book, to life. And I was traveling as I do. I spent a lot of time talking to Uber and Lyft drivers. And I was in this one Uber where I met Kara. And she kicks off the book because I really do think she was the catalyst. She was this woman who I met and I was chatting and she told me that she had left her job. She was on track to be the first female Black partner in her firm and she lost three of her family members almost within a couple months of each other. And she told me that, she just didn't see herself there. She didn't see a path. She didn't feel like it was worth the 80, 90 hours and the giving up of family and time with friends and her passion project. So she quit. I said, really? Like, why? I get that, but that's a big move. And she said, life is short. And she had gone to focus on her passion project, which was a nonprofit in Costa Rica giving microloans to women. And when she said that to me, I started to investigate and I kept hearing that over and over and over again. Life is short. CEOs that I met at talks who had been planning to be the CEO since they joined as an apprentice 25 years before, they were finally the CEO. 2 years in, they quit. One-way ticket to Florida, Airbnb for the next however indefinite amount of months, not joining the board, completely left. And so that root of why I wrote the book was based on so many people asking, why am I here and not having an answer? So it really is broken down into these three parts: the foundation, which is hope, purpose, and community. And then we go into the solving these new challenges. Without hope, purpose, community, we can't solve these big business challenges that we're dealing with. And that's where then in this next phase, we need higher levels of compassion, freedom, and openness. And then we go into the collective. The next phase is how do we hit our goals when it's not shared, when we don't have a collective commitment to the mission and the vision of our organization. Part of this reason around hope being the first chapter is the fact that there is this rise of hopelessness. You're seeing it across the board. We're feeling young people especially hopeless. And if you don't feel hope, how do you see yourself inside of the organization? If it's day-to-day survival and you don't see a future, how can you see a future inside of this role? Why would you have loyalty? Why would you be engaged or want to feel productive? So we need to execute on this hope strategy. I interviewed leaders of the military who said that idea that hope is not a strategy is actually incorrect. It's a myth. Hope is the only strategy, they said. For us to make sure that people are going to risk their lives, they need to believe that there's a reason to hit their goals, to execute on their mission. If they had hopelessness, we'd never be able to protect the citizens of our country and the globe. And so if you think about that, it makes so much sense. How do we build hope, though? It sounds so nebulous. Well, Snyder's theory, who is really the one that is sort of the founder of the idea of building hope, it really is about goal setting and having a goal and then having multiple pathways to get there. So when you write down what your goal is, you don't want to write down just one pathway. You want to create 3, 4, 5 plan A's, plan B's, plan C's. And then that if one doesn't work, you have this backup plan. And then you want autonomy to be able to get there. You don't want someone micromanaging how you get to your goals. You want to be supported. You want to have the resources. And the more we do this in incremental ways, the more we can build cognitive hope at work and the more we're going to see loyalty and happiness increase. We can use our objectives and key results as these frameworks for goals. Google does it really well. They have their goal setting, but then they have other peers engaged in the process so they can cheer you along and you're supporting your peers as well. It's a co-created goal. So it's not just determined for you what that looks like. It's challenging enough that you feel a sense of accomplishment at the end, but it's also not so easy that you feel like, what's the point? And then we really have to do a better job of giving time to reaching our goals and supporting. And I want us to end that term above and beyond because it is very difficult to explain what that looks like. It's almost like, snowflake is, there's no exact same one. It's all different. That's what the idea of above and beyond is. For me, at 47 with kids, sandwich generation versus Gen Z just starting out in their new job, what does that look like? It's different for both. So we have to start looking at making plans in our process, making sure that we're focusing on goals so that we can feel a sense of mattering at work, which is really important. Purpose is so significant. And that's why I put this into the second chapter. Had the privilege of talking to some really smart people on the topic, interviewed Adam Grant extensively. And we talked a lot about what purpose is and how important it is. And we know it improves people's retention, of course, but there's something that happens when we start to lack meaning and mattering in what we do. It completely disengages us, but it really leads to burnout. What we want to do when we're thinking about purpose is not focusing so much on the big mission. A lot of leaders make this mistake of thinking that the mission is something that they need to get everyone connected to. But when you look actually at the purpose gap, we see leadership have, and we're looking at 8 out of 10 executive leaders have a high connection to mission and a high sense of purpose. And they actually strongly believe that those that are in their workforce feel the same. And yet there's a massive gap, between 7 to 8 out of 10 executive leaders, and really only 1 out of 8 believe that they actually are connected to the mission or even know what it is. And so that gap is something that we need to align between leaders and the workforce. We need to learn what lights people up, what stresses them out. And so we have this non-work related check-in that I highly recommend. You ask these 3 simple questions. What lit you up? That allows leaders to be able to understand how to motivate you. What are those personal passions that you care about? So I can tie your personal values to your day-to-day role. Maybe you just love, connecting with people. You're a connector. Well, then why don't we make it that within your role, you're getting more time to meet with clients or to connect with coworkers or work on projects where you get to play that role. It changes all of the tedium and bore out, which we're seeing right now, and makes us feel like, okay, that boring thing that I'm doing now has meaning. It matters. We also then, when we say what stresses you out, we can find out what is causing burnout. What stresses you out is really critical because you cannot feel connected to a mission if you are feeling completely exhausted. And then finally, what can we do for each other to make next week easier? This is where we build that hope strategy because we are working together to achieve goals. We have quick wins. It's been discovered that even making your bed in the morning can build cognitive hope. It's just solving problems without having to celebrate the big goals. We're celebrating the day-to-day goals. We're bringing that value to task connection. We're integrating just what we care about into the day. And that's really director-led. It's managers having the autonomy to be able to help that. And what we also want to do to find out what people are really motivated by is initiating stay interviews. So instead of finding out why someone left after they're gone and it's too late, every year on their work anniversary, initiate a stay interview. What are the things that would keep you, from leaving? And let's focus on executing on that instead of just looking at waiting for people to leave. Then we have to look at the community. So we want quality relationships for life. That's so critical for us to be able to actually, build these relationships that have become, I would say it's changed a lot, but a lot of it has to do with the pandemic as a catalyst. Because we had to avoid each other at all costs, it was for the first time, the entire world was feeling like if they interacted with another human, that it could put their life in jeopardy. And we built these habits, our neural wiring changed. And so when we look at how we're going to really improve culture, we need to look at the root causes of our psychological barriers. And when we can help people get through those psychological barriers, that's how we're going to have the kind of work culture that everyone wants. And relationships are fundamental. Right now, we're in a state of toxic productivity. I wrote this article for Harvard Business Review that went viral. And I think the reason is because this is the habit that has been built over decades, but it was exploded inside of the last 5 years, where we're in the morning checking our email, we're spending more time in what physicians affectionately label pajama hours, but everyone is experiencing pajama hours right now. And we're talking about it like, oh, that's fun work. A lot of women that I interviewed said, oh, well, I have a glass of wine and I just sit there and finish my fun work. And I think that first, that's not fun work. And second, obviously we don't want to develop a habit of alcoholism as we're looking at working. I'm sure there's a lot of things that when we're tired and drunk at the end of the night isn't going to help us do our work effectively. And so I said, we have to get rest. Rest, unfortunately, is a four-letter word these days. As you look here at this data, we've increased our meetings by 252%. I mean, look at the number of billions of meeting minutes that we've added since 2019. It's astronomical. And it actually, when you look here, productivity declines when we have 2 hours or more meetings daily, and productivity improves when we have less meetings. So we need to break that habit. Maybe we're not going to be doing planks to end meeting fatigue, but we do have to get better about figuring out, is it necessary? Because we need our community back at work. Right now, work feels like going to school without art, gym, or recess. When you look at the social contagion of happiness, here right now is this person in the middle here. And if he had a happy friend that was near him, that was proximal, that he spent time in person with, it could increase his happiness by 25%. Happy siblings increase their happiness by 14%, spouses 8%, neighbors 34%. That is huge. I kind of laugh that our spouse is only increasing our happiness by 8%, but at least our neighbors are cheering us up. The thing we need to do at work is increase the social contagion, and we do that with rituals, bringing back the kind of proverbial hanging out, what used to be considered forced fun, but celebrating birthdays in the lunchroom or whatever it was where we'd have water cooler moments. Those have unfortunately gone away along with our time, our ability to hang out with other people. That loneliness is increased because of it. And we need to bring that back through ritual, because we do this ritual, then it creates a social contagion theory. People see other people around having fun, or they feel it. People talk about something that they're connected to, and you overhear it. You want to be part of that. It creates a sense of healthy FOMO, which is what is actually called conservation of resources. So when any human being sees energy somewhere else and it's starting to percolate and get bigger, this is where we want to be. We want to be around that because it's how we survive. We can do this by spreading positive gossip. Great research that found that if you talk behind someone's back inside of an organization, which was an intervention they practiced, and what happened was that people that were onboarding started to feel a level of psychological safety much faster than you would see in those that onboarded outside of that environment. And what it created was higher innovation cycles, more, obviously more friendships, ad hoc friendships. It made people feel like other people were talking about them positively behind their back. So that made them feel like they could be more comfortable speaking up or providing feedback. Again, we're seeing this time poverty show up in the rise of desktop dining or dining al desco, which is one of my favorites. I think that what we need to realize is that we're just sitting more. Even when we have an opportunity to step away from our desks, we don't. And that's really, an issue of just being on so many Zoom conferences, which one study found that Zoom conferences are actually making us less social and making us less collectively intelligent. And a big part of that is because we are holding back, women more than men. If we get on a phone, it's like our audio synchrony is only focused on just having one sense, and it makes us more in tune. We're more practiced at being able to interject or step back. And we also need to connect with each other. I've been saying that culture can be built in 20 minutes or less. And it really can, because everything I'm telling you, it's a 20-minute meeting. It's these interventions that are 20 minutes or less, and it's just incrementally built in. Positive gossip, I mean, that's probably 2 minutes or less. Time poverty can be addressed by eating lunch together. This Cornell study found that 20 minutes of leaving your desk and having lunch with someone else increased all of these business metrics. It was unbelievable, the difference. We also want to talk about flexibility. And I guess this got unhighlighted here, but flexibility is not only about where, and that's really what we focused on lately. When you look at 60% of the the workforce, they're non-remote enabled. So we need to look at flexibility as what and when and how and with whom, what you do. Can you do it with someone that you really like and spend more time with them? And what I heard from one of the employees that that I interviewed, they said that flexibility is not just a perk, it's a right. And that has something that has stuck with me because it's changed. And so here is the slide, but it's just this idea of us being able to recognize that people want flexibility, and that has become table stakes. It isn't just when we used to have Fridays off for summer was like that company would win best company of the year. It's now an expectation, as you see from this data. Gen Zs, all the workforce really wants their flexibility, and that could mean why, how, when, what. But in a lot of ways, when we talk about return to office, we want to make sure that these data points are front and center before we make a decision to have someone back 5 days in the office, because it does really impact certain groups, especially women. If you look at this one example of this woman who, I love the story. She was a climate scientist. She was asked to be on CNN, and this is actually what her space looked like. I had so many feelings about this. It's like we're trying to just juggle so many things. Women are, and this was after the workday. So this was her coming home to try to still be with her, her family. And she's realizing that work is with her at all times. And she wanted people to see that we don't really know what's going on. When you look at those return to office mandates, it absolutely impacts women more than it does their male counterparts, because they play this extra second shift. It's called the second shift of unpaid labor in the evening hours and on weekends. And when we think about that empathy, we talk about empathy and leadership, but I want us to start talking about compassion, because compassion is to action what we heard from that empathetic listening. When you start to see this impact of, FOBO, I love this. FOMO is fear of missing out. JOMO, the joy of missing out. Well, FOBO is fear of becoming obsolete. And 1 in 2 workers today globally are experiencing AI anxiety. A lot of people are still feeling like we're in a state of iRobot, and that's not where we're at. Most people are actually using AI in lots of different ways, but it's not strategic. 78% of people are bringing their own AI to work, and most leaders don't even know if they can explain the plan. So we want to be tailoring for AI anxiety right now. If you think of 50% of the global workforce is feeling this sense of obsolescence, and it's doubling for those that are in the younger cohort, we want to have specific mental health supports for this group, education and awareness, proactive career coaching, peer and community support, personalized resources. Peer mentorship is one of the best ways that we can tackle any sort of issues around these mental health questions. And so we've been using this tool, normalize mental health. We use this on our team on a scale of 1 to cat. How are you feeling today? You can consider your number and share it in the chat right now. But what I love about this is it's just not making mental health questions, or even just the state of how you're feeling, so serious that we feel like it has to be a conversation in crisis. It's all about just how we're doing. Often I'm an 8 if we have meetings that happen in the middle of the night. When I'm feeling really good, it's usually about a 4 or 6. And you know what? These are ways to make it fun and happy, and, just have this kind of normalization of these conversations. When we think about belonging, Everyone wants optimal distinctiveness, which is fitting in and standing out at the same time. But our DEI strategies right now have really, unfortunately, done a lot of othering. And I want to step back the chapter and more. And when I have this conversation about how we can improve DEI, it really does talk about what's gone wrong and now what can we do to make it better, which is ending the in-group and out-group programming. It's more about leveraging storytelling, not giving an award for International Female Entrepreneur of the Year, but just for Entrepreneur of the Year. And talk like Microsoft, the co-founder, this is Bill Gates. He's obviously now retired, but he used to talk about things that worked every week. And it was all different types of people from all different types of, demographics across the organization. He just focused on the wins and celebrating those people. And he was mindful of making sure there was inclusivity there. And we want to now think about these generational divides. They're huge right now. So how do we close the generational gaps? Huge number of different groups that were all working together with very different personality traits. And yet there's so much out there that people think is hilarious about talking about boomers and Gen Zs. And the American Psychological Association says this is one of the last, ageism is one of the last socially acceptable prejudices. And that's, I feel, what is causing this divide. We think it's funny, to label an entire generation as lazy and entitled. And this rise of youngism has played a role in deepening the divide. I talk to those that are in the mature workforce and they say, I don't feel like I belong in this workforce anymore. I can't wait to retire. And so when you look at this group, the Gen Zs, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're making zero wage. No wonder they're feeling disillusioned and hopeless. They're putting it out there and amplifying it with rage apply and quiet quitting. And yet they're only just saying what everyone else is feeling. Because work-life harmony is not antithetical to work ethic. And we need to get this like in our heads that it's okay to have well-being and we can still hit our goals. Because when you look at this work-life balance, it is something that across what I found across the board is important to everyone. It's a top consideration for every single group. And when you look at, life stage stressors, and I talk a lot about in the book about life stage benefits and how we can actually approach each unique age differently, we need to be thinking about how do we connect benefits and opportunities and programming to various generations along their journey. Gen X is really interesting. That's my group, the silent generation, the ignored middle child is what we're called. They are continuing to be overlooked for promotions because they aren't necessarily getting into the argument, which in a lot of ways is probably good, but they're 50% of right now the world's middle managers. So how are we going to get them to C-level if we're not doing succession planning? And a big part of that for anyone on this call right now between the ages of 35 to 50, you are in the least happiest time of your life. So I apologize as the happiness expert to give you that really depressing news. But the good news is that 70 is the happiest age of our lives. So there's a lot of looking up to do. And that's where we get probably to the great retirement boom. When you saw so many people leave, they're feeling like, again, when you face your collective mortality, like the entire workforce did, you start to say, life is short. And if I feel at this point that work doesn't want me in it, if I don't fit, I'm going to leave, which is going to create a major labor force shortage in the coming year. We're starting to see things like maternity benefits and flexible scheduling and continuous learning. I found that there was a lot of mature workers being overlooked for training because they felt like, what is the point? And that makes people leave. 40% of 40% of boomers said that if they had more training, they would stay longer in the workforce. So inevitably, everyone wants the same thing. I think we can all agree with that. And I just want to let you know that we want to put the pandemic in the rear view, and I totally get that. But at the same time, we need to remember how far we've come. And this is a story of one of my favorites from the pandemic, where this woman who was leading a team, but she was in charge of a larger nonprofit, and she decided that she was not going to give up. And she just led her entire meeting as a potato and became virally known as the potato boss. And I love this. And later, on, she said it was just what we had to do in the moment. And I think we need to get back to that. Some of the grit and what we were able to achieve with the amount of pivoting, the learning. And we were proud of ourselves for this. We felt like we had this ability to overcome. And I think right now, because we're so exhausted and we're feeling like life is short, there's a sense of ennui that we need to pull back on. We need to set those boundaries, but we also need to, as leaders, inspire our people so they don't have to ask the question every single day, why am I here? Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Really insightful. And I can see you've certainly generated a lot of thought because the chat was really engaged with sharing links, especially Sharon. Thank you so much. We will indeed share some of the links to content that Jen talked about as a follow-up, and happy to take some questions as well. We do have a question from Cam already. And he's wondering about any comments on volunteering and well-being. He's looked at some studies that talk about volunteering related to the workplace can be a positive intervention.
Well, thanks, Cam. And I love that you asked this because there's excellent research that came out of in the last year of the Oxford Wellbeing Institute. And it was kind of a big headline because William Flemings, who brought it to our attention, basically said, none of the well-being programs work, but altruism does. And so a sense of giving back within the organization, but volunteering was a really good programmatic way to actually move the needle on well-being inside of organizations. And we see this pro-social behavior of altruism being something that actually really exploded in a big way in the pandemic, people wanting to help each other. And we see that in crisis a lot. We see this desire to help each other. And yet we don't necessarily hold on to that. So what we need to be doing is refocusing our efforts on how do we help each other in an organization to feel a sense of altruism, which can be just, like you're Canadian, Tim Hortons. And we do this every so often where we'll buy a coffee for someone that's behind us or buy the person's order that's behind us. It's that mentality of just looking out for each other. And the more that we can create programming and a focus on that, the more likely we are to hit our well-being targets. So thanks for asking that question.
Thanks, Jen. And there's also been comments related to your fear of being obsolete, and especially in the age of AI. Can you speak a bit more about that in terms of what leaders can do to help team members learn and evolve?
Yes, I just came out actually with a brand new LinkedIn learning course, and that's out now. And it's really focused on how do we translate this AI anxiety into AI readiness, because it's a big problem if we can't get people to feel a sense of enthusiasm for AI. It's here, it's not going anywhere, and we're only adopting more of it. I keep telling organizations first, and this is at the highest leadership level, we've got to really be more thoughtful about how we adopt AI and making sure we really concretely know the why. And then we need to make sure that our managers and our middle managers, the ones that are working with employees directly, they understand it and they also know what resources are available to them. Is it a peer support programming? Is it, making sure that there's anonymous data gathering to find out how many people feel obsolete and how many people feel excited about AI, and making sure that we're pairing people up to be able to coach and support. We want to stop using the word reverse mentoring. I don't like that because it assumes that, the mature workers are the ones that don't know how to use technology, whereas the younger workers do. And I don't like that mentality. So it really should be around peer mentorship. And then I think one of the things that is the best way to get people excited about something is to enroll them in the experimentation. So leaders and managers, they can have a weekly, ooh, what did you learn about a new AI product this week? And it can be at home. It doesn't need to even be something that's going to change your job, but it's just something that you experimented with. And the more that AI is normalized and you recognize that it's actually pretty ubiquitous in our lives already, the more people feel like it's not something that has to be feared like the Terminator. And it's more just like asking Siri for, directions or for her to tell you a joke.
Thank you. That comes in handy sometimes.
It does.
We have a question from Aaron. Can you share any insights from conversations you've had with CEOs about investing in their employees and addressing burnout and really addressing it, not just lip service or mindfulness or meditation apps?
Yeah, that I think is still problematic, is that there's a misunderstanding of how you tackle burnout. And a lot of CEOs I know are trying to address burnout. For the first time, I've seen really large organizations, like some of the biggest in the world that I've worked with or spoken to, and they are actually including burnout questions on their surveys. They're trying to gather if people are feeling it. It is a major problem. The Mercer Trends report really was asking CEOs what their thoughts were about the greatest risks, and burnout was it. So it's definitely top of mind. But again, the programming is counter to what capitalism is. And I don't feel like, capitalism is a bad word. It really is just that we are in a weird stage of how we measure productivity, and it's hours, not goals, which is, I think the biggest problem. And so we're looking at having to meet these measurements of productivity, and yet that doesn't necessarily demonstrate if people are meeting their expectations. And so then we think we have to have overwork, more workload added. We're doing more with less. Resources are being taken away, and people are already feeling exhausted and disengaged. What I've been saying is we need a reset and understand that 5 years at this pace is so unsustainable. And we don't want people in our organizations feeling burned out and disengaged and not moving and feeling stuck. That's worse than them leaving. And a lot of what middle managers can do is, and directors, in that relationship where they're in the work with their employees, is to figure out what are the stressors and then tackle those bespoke ways with individual programming. Managers can be mental health conduits, and they're not mental health professionals, but they're mental health conduits. And I've mentioned this before, but they can learn about the programming that's available, what's in the benefits, what's in the EAP, and they can be working to support that. Pepsi is doing a really good job. It's almost like similar to the non-work related check-in, but they're listening for these types of opportunities to engage in benefits that might help. And that's how we autonomously, as leaders that might not necessarily agree with the policies, can still have some control and still, and improve people's level of well-being and decrease chronic stress.
Thank you for that and for your additional time here. We have a couple more questions if you've got time for a couple more, Jen.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally. I love it.
In our audience, I can appreciate most everyone is sticking around, but we understand if you need to hop off. The two questions. Marianne's wondering, do you have thoughts for small staff teams like 5 or less? And does that differ from larger organizations?
No, you know what? And I wrote about this in the burnout epidemic. The best, most successful teams are 5 or less. And this has been evidenced across the board that, what really is going to move the needle in large organizations is managers that have that sense of autonomy to be able to work and be nimble within their group. It's when there's, a sense that everyone has to move along with the policy. So specifically and directly that they don't have any sort of movability or variability in how they manage their team. They're the ones that end up having really, unhealthy culture. So you're actually in a sweet spot. And I think that where this is amazing, and the opportunity here is amazing, is that you can really set the tenor. And so what I've been saying across the board is that employees can't see can't be what they can't see. And the only way that we are going to make a move towards a healthier, happier, higher performing workplace is if models lead, if they are the ones that are showing and demonstrating the best behavior that they want. So you want something to change, you have to make a point to do it yourself. I've been talking about loud vacationing. If you're going out, make sure, and taking a vacation, make sure you do that by not emailing, not meeting, not communicating with people while you're away, making sure that you trust that people can do the things that need to be done while you're not there. And then really celebrate people that are being, are resting, are taking that time to hit their goals versus working these extended hours. There's a lot that I write about in the book very tactically for leaders of these size of teams to be able to then move the needle. But it does start with you.
Thank you. And that leads into, you may have addressed this last questions, which is, what if managers or senior leadership aren't open to accepting change? What do you do then?
This is a really tough question. And I've been seeing this because not everyone has the privilege of just quitting. I mean, that we've seen that people end up feeling really stuck. And for me, it's, there's Trojan horses that we can use. And I always say, if you're comfortable with it, use data and try your own pilot in experimenting with certain things to be able to then communicate what the benefits were. If everyone in leadership's focus are on business outcomes like retention, or it's on job satisfaction or engagement, productivity, whatever it is that matters to them, figure out how you can measure that within your organization or within your team. So maybe it is having a non-work related check-in, and you test that 20-minute, the sort of trial, and you ask people what their job satisfaction is before whatever outcome you think is worth measuring, and then ask at the end, if you can show that this 20-minute intervention that you did with this meeting actually improved job satisfaction by 20%, those are conversations that are met with more openness because you've proven out the pilot. And I think we can do that in lots of different ways. The 20 minutes of lunch. Oh, we made sure that we had 20 minutes of lunch once a week, and this changed morale. We had, better shorthand. We achieved our goals faster. The more that we can communicate with data, the more likely we are to be supported in being able to move policy or maybe move people along further in their journey towards a more well organization.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jen, and to our audience for all of your engagement. It just benefits everyone with additional resources too. And certainly part of what stayed with me, Jen, is your recommendations about the asking what lights people up, what stresses you out, and what's something that could be done next week to make things a bit easier, amongst many other takeaways.
I'm so glad. It was wonderful being with you. I love our time together, Teresa.
Thank you. And someone on the session here will win a copy of your book. So I'm just going to do my screen share right now. We have set up so that everyone who RSVP'd will be in this draw. So here we go. Well, the sound's not working, but we'll take it anyways.
I can hear it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Nancy, congratulations. We will send you a copy of Jen's book. And for anyone who does work with us to bring Jen into your organization, hopefully you've seen so much of the value she can bring. We do have a special offer, which includes a number of books with every booking coming up. So ask us about that, and we'd be happy to send you more information there, as well as we'll send a copy of this recording and all of the links that were referenced in the session. Thanks again, everyone, and thanks, Jen.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.